Good evening, everyone. I'm going to pass it right off to Denise to start off the meeting. We have some updates to give you.
Oh, thanks, Tina. Hi, everybody. It's been a while since we met. Not going to sugarcoat it. It's not good where we stand right now. But, thankfully we have Design Lab here. We are going to go through sort of what's happened over the last few months. And give an update of where things stand and where we think we need to go. When the bids came in, I'm not going to lie, Tina and I had a little cry fest in the parking lot of the town building. So it's not at all what we expected. But we're resilient. We will regroup and figure out where we need to go from here. So without dragging this on anymore, I will hand it off to our friends over at Design Lab who were as equally disappointed as we were. It was really a sort of staggering afternoon, and we all sort of felt the same. So they are working harder than ever to try and move this project forward. So we greatly appreciate that. And I will turn it over to the folks at Design Lab.
Yes, thank you, Denise, and good to see everybody again. It has been a little while. Denise, do you mind enabling screen sharing, please, so we can pull up our presentation?
There you go. You should be able
to. Thank you. One moment. Here we go.
So I'll just make you co-host. Okay.
There we go. Yeah, it's been a couple months, a little over 2 actually, since we met with you all last. We have gone through our bidding process as anticipated. And unfortunately, as Denise alluded to, the numbers came back considerably higher than where we were anticipating, to the point where we need to sort of reevaluate where we're at and consider our steps to move forward. So we do, have all of that information to share with you. It'll be a relatively brief amount of content, but then we hope to sort of land on, at the end, as we suggest here, strategies on how to move forward in the resulting discussion. This should all look familiar to you. We'll zoom in to October and November. We last saw you all at the end of September. And in the past, 7-8 weeks, we've gone through the sort of public procurement bid process. Advertisements went out to bidders in late September. We submitted a drawing and specification package on the central register, and that went out to 11 pre-qualified general contractors and any DCAM certified filed subcontractors. We went through a question and answer period. We hosted a pre-bid conference on site to get people acquainted with the building, and we received bids back from filed sub-bidders at the end of October, and then general contractors mid-November. The challenging part, as you've heard, is we are considerably beyond where we anticipated. We were anticipating and advertised the project at 8.4 million. That is where we landed with our cost estimator, and that is a number that we shared with all of you as we wrapped up the construction document phase. The lowest bidder, we'll go into more detail here in a moment, was Hutter Construction. Again, they were one of our 11 pre-qualified general contractors. Their number is approximately 10.8, which is a significant gap from where we wanted to be, over 25%. In rough numbers, it's really hard to swallow, and it does translate to over $1,200 a square foot in construction cost, which is, frankly, frankly, a little, frankly staggering, and not something we anticipated. This is a little probably dense for you guys all to read, but there's two things here to take into account. The general bid summary that you see at the top, we received 4 general bids out of 11 that had pre-qualified. Hutter was our lowest at approximately 10.8, which represents a $2.4 million increase over our estimate. And then you can see there in the other numbers at the top where they came in from other bidders. The bottom is the filed sub-bid summary. I won't go into a ton of detail there, but I think we explained to you back during CDs that there are components of the project that, based on Mass General Law, need to be bid out to a subcontractor pool, and essentially the lowest bidder typically gets that work, and that's broken up into the subcategories of scope that you see, from masonry, waterproofing, roofing, glass, through the major trades of mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection. Many of those came in or around where we were anticipating, though you can see the majority of them were all more than what we were estimating, with a few exceptions of electrical and plumbing actually coming in a bit better than we had hoped. And this really isn't that uncommon, some's ups and downs in the filed sub bid categories. But in aggregate, there's nearly $1 million bust, if you will, in the filed sub bid scope. A big chunk of that is in the number that you see sort of the mid-right for the fire protection. There's nearly a little more than a $700,000 bust in the sprinkler number, the fire protection number. We did receive just one bid for that specialized system, which is considerably, contributing considerably to our overall delta. Just sort of a high-level summary of what we think is driving where these bids came in. We did get 4 GC bids, so there was a fair amount of interest. One, the low bidder Hutter, was particularly invested. They came out to the pre-bid walkthrough. They were very active in the RFI process, and they did come in low. Ideally, we would have received a few more GC bids, but 4 out of 11 is not that unreasonable. We did speak to a couple that did not end up bidding, who we thought would. And basically the story we got from them was they've got such a backlog of work, and there's enough work out there that they didn't choose to bid this project. And that, ultimately I think has an impact on just the market in general. It's very flush with work, and people are being very selective in what they bid on. From the filed sub perspective, we had limited coverage. We had overall, I think, pretty good coverage, but we had limited coverage, particularly on 4 of the filed sub bid sections where we only had 1 or 2 bidders. And again, I think that just speaks to people are really kind of picking and choosing what they work on. So the biggest factors on cost, we think are just that, the selective bidding nature of the market. That paired with the fact that this is a historic building, it's a renovation of an existing building, it's relatively modest in size. Folks just aren't that interested in it. So we're not getting as much coverage as we had hoped. And there's also a limited sort of economy of scale. It's a 9,000 square foot project, but we pretty much need every filed sub bid and all the subcontractors on the project that you would need for a 50 or 60,000 or 50 or 60 million new police station or a new fire station, something where there's a lot more scale and then therefore more economy. And that is what we were hearing from our, from the two GCs that we reached out to that we, who didn't end up bidding. These are some of the factors in their mind. So it's fair to say that the market is not, it's not helping us. It's something that we have been concerned about and are dealing with on all of our projects, like you've heard us speak about through the process. And unfortunately, I think these bid results just confirm all of that. I will say, I don't think there are any smoking guns in our CD estimate of things where we, egregiously, misscope or misquantified scope or did anything like that. But what I will say is I don't think in retrospect, our estimate accounted as well as it should have the just bidding market. Because all of this everything I just described just inflates all of the costs and continues to inflate costs beyond what we would have anticipated. We did do a D-scope with Hutter, a relatively brief one just before Thanksgiving on Tuesday. They shared a little bit of insights, but they were also a little bit tight-lipped, understandably so. They did mention that the site work, the amount of grading work that we have to deal with our sort of 2 levels, the amount of retaining walls and the ramps to make all of that work was a considerable portion of the non-filed scope. They did say the roof and masonry repair work on the existing building was not insignificant, and that's reflective of the filed sub-bid numbers for those 2 categories. They did say that while a modest building, there was enough millwork, particularly paneling and some of the millwork around the interior stair that contributed to a larger millwork number, which we'll talk about here in a bit. And then they went on to say that the fire protection number was a pretty big glaring issue that we need to figure out. So that's sort of the overall summary. We have the plans here just as a refresher for everybody. We can refer back to these. These are exactly what you saw at the end of the construction document phase and our overall design process back in September. We can revisit these here in a moment, but it's really to set the stage that I think, or we think collectively that, we're going to get this project to a point where we can, realize something and get something constructed. We're going to need to revisit some of the, decisions we came to in the past, programmatically, landscape wise, architecturally, to make a big enough dent in the bids to get to a place where we can, we can build something around that $8.45 million number. It's not just changes of finishes. It's not just removing a little bit here or a little bit there. We have to make some bigger moves, which is a challenge. And it's certainly not where anybody wants to be after we've all invested so much time in this. But unfortunately, that's the reality. So for conversation and just trying to look forward here and come up with ideas on how to keep the project alive and keep it moving, we've pulled together this list of what we're just calling strategies or considerations to move forward. None of these are hard and fast recommendations, but it's, as I said, it's just to set the stage that we really need to kind of reevaluate some of the bigger decisions that we came to during our design process with a goal to reduce scope and then reduce the bid numbers. So we've broken those into, at least for this evening's conversation, 4 categories: architectural, program, landscape, and then soft costs. And for the sake of just talking through all of this, we'll start with the architectural There's some pretty easy ones that we obviously need to target, which we already targeted, which again makes this so much harder to digest. But we went through a value management process in the summer to get from a 9.2 number down to an 8.4 number. And some of these things we already reduced, but I think we need to revisit those and likely reduce them further. So some easy things to check off: eliminating all double height spaces, reducing the amount of millwork and paneling beyond what we already did, eliminating the vegetated roof that we have on the rear portion of the existing building. But then there's some bigger things, and I think that's where we should focus our conversation this evening. We think there's a way to simplify the massing of the building. We evolved into a point where we started to use the language of the primary volume and the secondary volume. And is there a way to simplify that and reduce the square footage? That goes hand in hand with a big sort of shift in programmatic thinking, which is why those two are kind of on top of the pile for both the architectural and programmatic categories. But can we simplify the massing of the addition by reevaluating some of the program spaces that we were hoping to accommodate? And that might suggest, rather than having a dedicated community room, that community room use is now doubling as lobby, and those two things are working hand in hand, and they're not dedicated spaces. There's all sorts of other programmatic considerations we should be thinking about that we've listed here. And there's also, landscape and site considerations. Wasn't necessarily intending to kind of go through each of these, but wanted to kind of pause here and give you all an opportunity to ask questions, and we can offer any answers we can, or suggestions we have on how to advance the project.
And I'm going
Okay.
to jump in for a minute.
Go ahead.
Ben, sorry, Tina.
No, it's good.
So one thing that we've talked about, obviously, is the cost of the fire protection system. I have spoken to the fire chief, and he has suggested that it's time that we submit an appeal to the state to not have to install the fire protection system. So we will do that. A couple things to note: I don't know what the timeline is to get something like that reviewed and approved. And obviously it's at the state's discretion. So speaking to the fire chief, we have a number of justification items in our project that would lend itself to have the state give us a pass on that, but there are no guarantees. So at this time, we're talking between, $1 and $2.5 million that we need to, or $1.5 and $2.5 million that we need to find in this project, depending on how that request plays out.
Okay. Aisha has her hand raised. Go ahead, Aisha.
Thanks. This is, I think, more of a process question. So if we go through a similar process here as we did with the value management, find things to take off the list or revisit, are we now essentially negotiating with the lowest current bidder, or are we putting all of this back out and spending months waiting for bids to come back in?
That's a really good question. Thank you for asking. It's the latter. So just based on the way the general bid laws work, we have to rebid the project. So yes, that means that there is a sort of redesign phase. Hopefully that can move in a relatively accelerated fashion, but then it would have to go back out to bid and go through the same process that we just went through for the past, month and a half, 2 months.
Thank you.
And I will say, I don't know that that's a bad thing. Obviously, the timeline is not ideal. That we would need additional months to redesign. But as Ben alluded to, 4 out of the 11 GCs bid, if we are able to take out some of the more difficult components, i.e. the fire protection, we may have more bidders in the mix. There may be more competition for us. Also, a different time of year, we may have people ready to plan their, summer and fall and next winter work. versus the folks that had already lined up winter work. So there's pros and cons to having to rebid, but I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing, given what we might be able to take out of the project.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Denise. I think generally speaking, rebidding typically, you see better numbers, you see more competition. We can't just simply rebid the project though where it is and hope that we're going to get enough back, right? Because there's too much of a gap. So we have to, we actually have to redesign and reduce scope, and then rebid. But I agree. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing.
Sunny, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just had a question about the numbers that we saw earlier. I understand that the market is kind of tough. Yeah, I think it was one ahead of that. But if I'm correct, yeah, so does that mean that that's the fire suppression is $728,000 over what was estimated? And if that's true, why is it such a huge disparity in that number? Because that's the one that sticks out a lot.
Yep. Another really good question. Yeah, it obviously sticks out a lot. And that is where we received only one bid. So to refresh everyone's memory, we went through the whole design process where we were evaluating what type of fire protection system to have. Remember, early in the process, we were considering cisterns and storing water on tank and having a fire pump and all of that. And that wasn't really, feasible from a space perspective. We didn't have any place to adequately store those big tanks. So we then kind of changed course and we went to a specialized fire protection system that's, in layman's terms, it's a mist system. So it's a significantly reduced amount of water, and it's actually pressurized using nitrogen gas. And it's not the typical fire protection system that you would find in any school or any other public building or library. It's pretty unique, and as a result, not a lot of fire protection subcontractors have experience with it. So we only got one bid. We suspect, we don't know for certain. There's no way to really tell, but we suspect that the bidder that did submit just frankly threw a really heavy, big number at it, because they didn't quite know what they were contending with or how to install a system like this. We did get quotes during the design process for what it's worth from a vendor that provides this type of system, which is what informed our cost estimate. I think in retrospect, our cost estimate probably should have been closer to 400,000 after we've had, follow-up conversations with them, but that's still a huge gap. And I think it's just people don't know the type of system, and there aren't many folks who can install them.
Okay.
I will just add that we had sort of a debrief with Fitzmyer and Tachi as well, and they were just as surprised at some of these numbers. So for all that they've worked on with the engineering side and helped us identify some of these numbers, they were a bit surprised at where things came in also.
And I believe Matt also reached out to some other fire protection contractors, and they were just as shocked with that number as well. So this contractor who submitted the number is, I don't want to say like playing the game, but we do believe they kind of threw a number. They may not actually have the system even specs, just based on these conversations we've had with other people in the industry. So it's part of the kind of filed sub bid system that we have to work with.
Andrew is correct.
Okay, Morgan, go ahead.
So I have a lot of questions, but I'm going to try to keep it to a couple right now. Not counting the fire protection system, because we might be able to waive that, or I assume there might be a possibility of looking into an alternate system, something like that. Okay, we're still off on basically every single thing. So I guess I have two questions. One is, are we just at the point where we have no choice, but we have to cut things in order to move forward? And if so, what are we going to do to counterbalance the fact that the longer this takes to go to bid, the higher the prices become? So even if we cut more, who's to say that it's not going to continue, that, you know, inflation is not going to continue to rise? Like at a certain point, you know, how do you get around that? I mean, I still, like everybody, I don't understand how we can be so off when we had, you know, cost estimators working on this, but I mean, I know like things happen and I understand all of the reasons. It just feels really like what happened here. So I don't want to have that happen again if we're going to spend time cutting even more things.
So
Yeah,
I don't know that we can avoid that. To answer your first question, Morgan, in my opinion, yes, we're at the point that if this project is going forward, we need to start cutting. I cannot go back to the taxpayers a fourth time and ask them for more money. They made it clear. I think all of you were at the special town meeting when they argued with me over me paying $2.5 million into this project. They didn't even where it's not coming separately out of the taxpayer's pocket. That was a longer argument than the $241 million high school project. So you know, the money is all we have. Now we need to figure out how to make it work. You know, I think we've touched on a few things, and I know Ben can go into it more, but you know, some of the things that may help us by delaying it a few months, you know, having some more competition, a different time of year, removing some of the, I don't want to say controversial, but trickier aspects of the project. And in the end, it's reducing square footage. We have no choice other than reducing square footage. And so that's what we're going to end up coming down to. But I'll let Ben go into it more.
Okay, can I ask a follow-up question, which is, and maybe this is more of a statement, but I'd like to be able to communicate this information to the town, because assuming we make all of our changes and we have to explain that we're reducing space and all the whatever extra things or cool things, like, I guess, I mean, I guess this is available, it's posted on the town site or whatever, but I guess I want to just find a way to communicate this in a way to the town so that people understand that, like, we're not just trying to take their money and then not deliver what we said we could. Which
No,
I
completely agree. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And the intention is we will put something out publicly. But to be honest, we just got the final numbers on Wednesday. And we wanted to have an opportunity to talk to you. And I asked Tina to send a message out to the full library trustees so that they're aware of this before they start, you know, before everyone starts hearing it from secondhand.
No, I appreciate that, both of you, I saw that. That's great.
Yeah, so we will put something formal. I mean, we need to give an update to the residents. It's a matter of what we're going to put out there. And I think we need to have this, you know, and maybe another week or two of some brainstorming and, you know, starting the process with Department of Fire Services and, you know, some things that we can at least say we're already in the pipeline. You know, we had a meeting today and you know, we talked about identifying some exterior site work things that I can have the highway department work on, you know, maybe take that out of the GC's list of things to do, you know, to maybe lower the cost. You know, so we're trying to come up with some creative things that we can at least say we're starting to work on before we just say, hey, we're, you know, $2.5 million over budget again.
yeah,
Okay, thank you.
Morgan, just to add to that, I mean, we share your frustration. You know, we thought, I never would have guessed, nor would our cost estimators, that we were at $1,200 a square foot. I know that doesn't help us because it's a challenging place to be. You know, in round numbers, our estimate accounted for $950 a square foot, which just based on what we've seen recently, we thought that was an appropriate number. 5 or 6 years ago, this would have been a $700 a square foot project. It's just sort of unfathomable what's occurred, you know, since the pandemic in the past couple of years. It's just inflated construction costs in a way that I don't think we've, we can forecast and anticipate yet. I think it's easier to do on much larger projects that again have that economy of scale, but pretty clearly this smaller type project that's pretty fussy. It's a historic building, it's a renovation, it's kind of impacting smaller projects like this more so than bigger. In terms of your comment about cutting, we certainly need to reduce square footage. There's no doubt about that, but our goal is to do that in a way where we're not cutting program, that we're still achieving the majority of our program goals, maybe not every single one, but that we're achieving the majority of them. And we're just thinking about doing that in a different way than what's gotten us to this point. And that's mostly spaces that are serving double or maybe even triple duty, and thinking about that creatively to achieve programmatic goals and needs while not eliminating them.
Other questions, comments?
I don't see any right now.
I know it's a lot. It's a lot for people to take in.
Lisa, go ahead.
Well, obviously we're all disappointed, but thank you for all the work you're putting in. I know this has got to be heartbreaking from every angle for everybody. So this extends this whole process. So in addition to cutting costs, we're also adding a longer span of time with the design team. And believe me, I don't say that out of any malice, but so we're just driving costs up everywhere. So can we get down to the nitty gritty about what's realistic about what we can do at this point?
Process wise, Lisa, or like scope wise, or both?
Design wise, what's really going to get us where we need to go as quickly as we need to get there?
So, we started to talk about this, just internally in preparation for this meeting. We need to just saying this a lot, but we need to just reevaluate many, if not all, of the decisions that have gotten us to this point, and thinking about how we can achieve the majority of the programmatic goals, but thinking about it differently than where we've landed. And I think, we can't change the footprint of the addition, or excuse me, of the historic building, right? That's a fixed box that we're working within. We can change the footprint of the addition, so the addition needs to get smaller. By how much, we're not certain yet, but it certainly needs to get smaller. And as a result, we need to think differently about the program spaces within the addition and how we may use spaces within the existing building differently to account for what we're not accommodating for in the addition. And a big component of that, the largest space, is this dedicated community meeting space. Can that, I think a critical question and something that we need to look at right out of the gate is, can that work as part of the lobby to the addition? And maybe, that's not an ideal scenario during the day when people are coming and going, but in the evening, could that work as a space for people to gather and have a meeting outside of library hours? Yeah, we think it could. And then during the day, instead of having that dedicated space, do we think differently about the other, the spaces within the existing building? So do we reconsider one of these two spaces on the upper level of the existing building to be more versatile and to be more flexible to support events that we would have had in this new community room, but we have to account for elsewhere? So it's just massaging everything that we've done and just thinking outside of the box and not being bound by decisions that we've made.
So just to follow up, so what is that process? Is that you three and your team taking this off and coming up with some new plans and bringing them back to us? Is it us talking today about what we think should be cut immediately? What's the iteration process, I guess? I'm not being very articulate.
No, you are. It's so I think it's twofold. I mean, obviously we floated a bunch of stuff tonight and everybody is sort of reacting to the news of being way over budget and then figuring out ways to change course. So, I don't think we need to come to any conclusions tonight, but like we need to make big adjustments. Okay, we can't just change the finish of the building and think it's going to get us there. We need to think bigger picture than that. So we've started that conversation with what's on screen here. I think in terms of our process, what we'd recommend is that we set up a couple workshops. If we can weasel one in before the holiday break, great. If we have to start in earnest in January, that's okay. But we do efficiently work through a redesign process where Design Lab comes to a meeting with alternate plans for you all to react to. And we kind of, just like we did through the value management process, weigh the pros and cons of each decision. But we need to be prepared to make some pretty dramatic changes to the way we've been thinking about the project. So ideally, Lisa, it's anywhere from a 2 to maybe 3 month process, but hopefully less than that. And then we churn out updated drawings as quickly as we can to get this back out to bid, ideally in the winter. But that's all TBD. There's a lot of big things to discuss. The fire protection decision is a big one. We don't know the timing of that. But I think if we can get it out to bid in the late winter, that would be ideal. I think try to rebid it in like April or May or June as people are getting into summer work is, would not be ideal, but we're all going to do the best we can.
Kat, go ahead.
Thanks so much. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for informing us of all this stuff. Definitely very disappointing. I just wanted to make sure that like when you do go through these iterations, like I see a lot of stuff here, that both, the Design Lab team and I think we as a committee really, really emphasize like the function of the building versus the form or the art of it. Just because there is like, cuts that need to be made so drastically. So I just feel like we really want to make sure, I would look at every decision as, is this adding artistically to the building or is this adding like an actual function? Like, because I think there are things, like a basic roof line or whatever that would, save costs, but then it would still achieve the same amount of, space for books and for people and for programs. So that's just like the non-architect in the room is just saying like to try to emphasize like the functionality so that we're not losing, like you said, those programming needs. And if we need to have things be, multi-use and stuff, that's great. But I would definitely emphasize that over like any of the design stuff. The other thing, like, so in other words, like, having that second entrance to the historic building, if that saves $1 million, not doing that, I think that's the first thing to go in my mind. I think that goes before a community room. But that's, again, just because I think the other door functions the same way. You can get in and out of the building. So it's just, that is what I'm like, just wanted to say. And like, again, yeah, reconsidering ramps and break rooms and things like that to make sure that we have, multi-use things and basic brick instead of fancy brick, that kind of stuff. That's just my opinion. But again, it's just because I think especially with landscaping, that can come later. I think you can get everything built in there and then a few years down the road, throw in a tree or some, a local orchard donates some trees or, in terms of masonry and stuff like that on the all the landscaping costs, I guess is what I'm saying, is I think that can also come, like, obviously you need to have the basic landscaping to get in and out of the building, and a basic patio space. But I think down the road, there can be further efforts to modify those things a lot easier than adding square footage. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to keep saying it till the end. Thanks, guys.
So just keep in mind though, Kat,
Yeah.
that second entrance goes and we lose the community preservation money. So there's another $1 million that we would have to find if that second entrance goes, because that was the selling point to get the community preservation funds.
It's said that we have to turn that into a,
That's why they gave us the money, was to restore the historic entrance of the historic building. So that's some of the difficulty with trying to figure out what we do to move forward. Is there are, you know, just like we talked about today with Design Lab, that, you know, one of the options is, you know, reconsider going all electric. Well, we just applied for a grant. If we don't go all electric, there goes our opportunity for the grant. So
right.
there are contingencies with some of the decisions that we've made that we have to keep in mind as we figure out what the strategy is to move forward.
Yeah. And I mean, is that something where you can go back to the Community Preservation Committee and say, like, you know, look, we are doing our best with this, but we can't, you know, we can't do X, Y, or Z. We can't make this into a second entrance because it's, instead of costing an extra $1 million, it's going to cost us an extra $2 million. And can we use the money that you gave us to, you know, help with the renovations of that historic section? Is that an option, or is that not an option? Like, is there something in writing that's holding us to that?
Well, their vote, but I mean, it's an option, but I don't know that they'd give us $1 million just to renovate when they've already paid to renovate the historic section once. The whole crux of it was the restoration of the second entrance.
Can you go back to them? I mean, you can't really go back to them and say this entrance is going to cost more. Like, we thought that doing this would cost $1 million and now it's going to cost $1.5 million. Can we have an extra $500,000? Like, I don't think they would say yes to that either, right?
You know, I mean, there's a possibility to go back to them for more money, but it has to go through the same town meeting process that they would have to authorize. I don't know that we could identify how much, I mean, I'm sure Design Lab can, on just what the historic entrance restoration is.
Right.
But
I mean,
you know, certainly something we can talk about.
So in terms of like, so did we, sorry if I need a little more clarification on this, but did we go, like, we went to CPC as like you guys did, as like a committee, as Design Lab, and then they presented something at town meeting, which then the voters voted on to use the CPC funds in that fashion? Like, so there should be a warrant that, does that have language about does that have, I don't remember language about restoring the exit, the entrance.
No, the town meeting language isn't that specific.
Right.
But their discussion and their vote at the meetings would be.
Again, I just don't ever think, I don't remember that coming up at town meeting. I could be, you know, wrong about that, but I just like, I don't know if that money is beholden to that.
Okay, you can,
I have
we
no
can
idea.
talk about this offline, but yes, their vote was to restore the historic entrance.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, that's part of our ZBA approval as well. So we may have to go back to the zoning board and get additional approval if we don't restore the historic entrance, because they approved the site plan with the second entrance. It's not as easy as just saying, we're going to cut this or we're going to cut that, is what I was trying to relay, because there are contingencies with what we've done now for the last 2+ years to get some of these approvals and to get some of this funding.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to make sure that we respond to the first part of your question, Kat, about, you know, or your statement, I guess I should say, about, you know, prioritizing program needs over, you know, sort of architecture or finish choices or whatever. We completely hear you loud and clear. I mean, we share that sentiment, and that's, you know, that's why we put everything on this list that, you know, might fit in either of those categories, and simplifying the roof form or eliminating that roof, thinking differently about the finishes, inside and out. All of that needs to be on the table, and to your point, should take priority as targets over, you know, program reduction.
Tina, I think Lisa has her hand up.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you. I'm wondering if there are any avenues we can explore to get around the fundraising boundary that is expressed in the warrant, where all the money raised has to offset the cost to the taxpayers. I saw the line item to do specific fundraising for furniture, and I believe that that certainly would be something we could do, but and I'm sure that it's in the back of everybody's minds about, you know, what about fundraising? And it's hard to get people excited about giving money to repay taxpayers. If we were going to people to say, we're trying to raise $2 million so that we can build the building we promised you, that would be a much better story to tell. And I'm wondering if we have any opportunity for wiggle room in what was expressed in the warrant, aside from specific donations like for furniture.
So yeah, yes and no. I mean, there's certainly wiggle room. The way the language is written, the fundraising and grants have to be received before the final borrowing is done. So obviously something like furniture, we wouldn't need until the building is complete. So there is some workaround there. You know, at the end of the day, the taxpayers have voted, you know, the 8,800,750,000. And then the tax implication is the 6 million and change. That was the 8 million minus the money from the trust funds and minus the CPC funds. So legally, I can tax and borrow that full 6 million and change. It's not what we've told the taxpayer. So I think we would have to, you know, consider how that would be handled, and whether that is a discussion at town meeting, whether that's just a decision that we do and have to figure out how to address it. But I wrote the language specifically with council that if no fundraising, if no grants, if nothing came in, we have an amount that we can tax the taxpayers. And, you know, a lot of what the extras was sort of in the notes. So there's wiggle room. It's not exactly what we told the taxpayer that we would do.
Yeah, okay. Oh, do you mind if I speak again, Tina?
Go ahead.
I know this sounds ridiculous to like say this out loud, but can there be some design made so that we could come back at some future point and add things that we chose not to put in, even if it is something as simple as really stripping down the landscaping, but have a design in place that when we could afford it, we could put the landscaping that would complement the building in place?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's possible. Or go ahead, Denise.
No, I was just gonna say, I think we talked about that a little earlier today. I think when it comes to the building itself, I think that's probably a big no. But when it comes to sort of the extras, I think that's certainly a possibility.
Yeah, it's much easier said than done for landscape features, you know, plantings or a hardscape or whatever the case may be, for that to be done down the road. But I think, you know, thinking that we can design the building to accommodate an addition, sure, we can absolutely do that. But I think the reality of that getting an addition being constructed in any near term is not the reality.
Tina, do you want to jump in?
What else is there to say? Do we move on from this? I mean, we wanted to make you all aware of where we are right now, so next steps are to have Design Lab, figure out what we can do to get this project into budget. And then we'll have another meeting and see where we go from there. Morgan.
I think that sounds fine, and I do agree that, like, I know it's the holidays and everyone's gonna be busy, but trying to get this out to rebid as soon as possible in the new year will be really helpful. I just want to second what Lisa said about the fundraising. So maybe as another follow-up, we can work with you, Denise, to come up with some language that we can use in future fundraising, because I think that is really going to make a huge difference. The way it sounds, and also the fact that we are dealing with so much over budget, that I think if we can frame it to people like, do you want to donate money for furniture? Do you want to donate money for landscaping? I think that might be really helpful. So I support that effort. I don't really mean to be like sneaking around what we told the taxpayers, but I also do.
No, and I completely agree, Morgan. And that's sort of why we've identified things, like I said, that sort of come after the project, the
Mhm.
landscaping, the furniture. That's an easier sell to say that this was contributed by fundraising versus fundraising
Yeah.
to help us finish the building. And then we're sort of
Totally.
playing around with what was legally voted on.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Or maybe we can do something like have a cutoff date of before the vote, that money was for offsetting, and post vote, it's for discretionary.
Yes. I mean, so again, it was worded that way to give us some leeway. It's just, we have to be, we have to be conscious of how we're going to move forward with something like that. Just because of how we led up to the votes and what we told the taxpayers. Again, at the end of the day, they voted a number that if no fundraising and no grants came in, they were still willing to pay. So, it's just a matter of finesse and figuring out the best way to portray those messages.
Okay, thank you.
Kat, go ahead.
Do we know, like, so I know you guys just said you applied for that electric grant and stuff like that. Will we have that information sooner rather than later, or is that like a 6 months from now we'll know kind of situation?
So they didn't give us an answer. I'm gonna reach out and see if they have any idea of what the timeline is. The grants were due in like October 20th, maybe. I think it was that week. I don't know how many they received. Traditionally it takes a couple of months for the state to go through and start making awards. But I'm going to try and get at least some update as to when we expect to hear one way or another.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Kevin, go ahead.
Hi, folks. My name's Kevin Wesley. I'm a member of the Revitalize Randall fundraising group. I guess what I haven't heard is what we reasonably think this is going to mean in terms of timeline, and does this have any sorry, let me start again. Do we have a clear sense as to what this means for timeline? Does this have any implications on the temporary space that the library is occupying? And is there any accreditation issues at all that Tina foresees with the delay?
So I can start regarding the temporary space. They can stay there forever as far as I'm concerned. There's nothing else that needs to be in that space. It's, the library can stay in there for as long as they need to. She can touch upon the accreditation, and I think the timeline, again, a lot of it's going to depend on how quickly we hear back on the fire suppression system. And I don't know what that timeline is. I'm going to try and get a better idea of that this week and see if it's, is it a 2-week turnaround? Is it a 2-month turnaround? I really have, I don't even know where to start with that. I think that's going to drive a lot of this conversation. If we don't need to do that, a lot of what's in that mechanical room goes away, and then Design Lab can shift some other things into that square footage and, really help relay out some of those spaces. If we need to, I'll be honest, if we have to put this fire suppression system in, I really don't know where this project will go. Because trying to find $2.5 million that doesn't involve the fire suppression system, I don't even know what we could do with that. But Tina, if you want to talk about the accreditation stuff.
Yeah, no, we're good. Aside of the fact that today I was in and everybody walks in going, where's the library? We've never been open on a Monday. I don't know where they're looking, but in terms of our state aid and our accreditation and all of that, we're good because we're still providing services to the public and everything. It's a different kind of good, obviously, because we're not in our own building, but the town building is amazing and everybody there has been great. So is it disappointing? Yes. Does it hurt us? No. It's okay. And, I have to remember that it's temporary, right? I think this, I'm thrilled with the desk I have compared to Randall. So, I think we're good. We are good in terms of all the state aid and rules that we have to follow. So that's not the issue. It's just trying to get this library built that will serve the needs of the community. And that's what's so disappointing. We really have to go back and figure out how to do that. The money is crazy. It's just crazy.
Well, and if I could tag on to that,
Yes.
Tina, I wanted, we share the frustration. We're incredibly disheartened with the numbers.
I
It's
know you do. I
hard
do.
thing
I
to
know.
swallow
I know.
for a municipality, any municipality, to be having to spend this type of money to, restore and expand the library. It's just, we wouldn't have thought we'd be here, obviously, but we're 100% committed to figuring out the solution with all of you on how to keep this project alive and moving forward. To table it at this stage would, just be
Worse. It'd be worse.
awful. So we're here and we're going to work alongside you and figure out a path forward.
Yeah. Kevin, did you have another question or is your hand still up?
A question and a comment. The suggestion to reducing the collection strikes me as pretty out there. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but
No.
it seems to me like that should be one of the last things that the committee considers.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because when we had our pre-meeting today, it's something that I agreed to look into because given the fact that we are a smaller town and a smaller library, and I know that we are open way more hours a week than the state requires us to be, which is a good thing. I'm not, that's a great thing. I said I was willing to look into that because if it is something where we can reduce our collection a little bit, it's not a major amount that allows us to have space and still provide the community what they need, then I'm willing to do that. But I have not even looked into it. I don't know what that entails. So that's where I was with that.
As a follow-up, as long as nothing that is associated with Star Trek gets lost from the collection, I'm okay
Do we
with
have
that.
any Star Trek? I don't
I
even
don't,
know.
I don't actually don't think you do, but the other comment I would just make is I hope that as the committee considers repurposing and reusing spaces, that anyone who met with Tina in her old office remembers what that office looks like, and that the space for the staff, I think, is really important to keep in mind, given how hard they work and the lack of office space and using conference rooms as for where they have their breaks or lunches. I hope that can be retained.
Yeah. Kat, go ahead.
Oh man, it's gonna make me sound like such an a-hole, Kevin. Thanks. To Tina's point, I would say that like a lot of people, like myself, a lot of people look at the collection as a Minuteman collection now. I don't even look at it as, well, does Randall Library have this book? I do go in and browse because I've got little ones and preteens and stuff, but I do think like having focus collections and then also being able to reach out to the whole network. Like right now, there is no collection at Randall. But people are still using it. I'm using a hole in the wall library down the road, and they don't have hardly any collection, but you could pick up any book and return any book. So I do think that is worth considering. And yeah, I just think things like break rooms, like the office, I totally understand. The break room, I think definitely needs to be reevaluated as a multi-use space if there's going to be things really cut down. Because again, I don't know how many hours are going to be spent in those spaces. I know I sound so terrible, but I'm just gonna say it because I just feel like I don't agree with, I feel bad, but I don't like I think that all those spaces should be looked at multifunctionally. And that's all I have to say. And I also agree with Lisa and with Morgan to the fundraising effect. I think I'm one of the bigger donors in town to the library project, but I'm not going to give any more money because I don't want to offset the taxpayer dues. But then if someone comes to me and asks me for money to put in some furniture or put in this, that, and the other, I'd be much more likely to. So, but that's just because I don't know, that's how I view it. Like, I just want to impact like the actual project build versus the tax burden. So.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I'd just like to ask, in the interest of the potential for having a meeting before the holidays come upon us, if administratively you could explore, not at this moment, but offline, possibly having a weekday meeting, because I know evenings get precious this time of year. And so if designs came about and we might be able to meet during the day to take a look at everything, I think it would be great if we could try to figure that out.
I think we can certainly look at that. I don't know how long it will take to have some, options available. But we can certainly take that into consideration when we're looking for a time to meet.
And we're flexible, obviously, if it's during the day. I mean, works for us.
Okay. So what do we move on to now?
Paying invoices. Unless Design Lab, Ben, do you guys have anything else in your presentation here?
No,
Okay.
that was the end of our content. We can obviously discuss, future meeting dates and all of that and figure out how to move that along.
Tina, can I just go ahead with the invoices?
Invoices, yes, please. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So I sent out this morning to everybody a list of the invoices that have been paid. Obviously we haven't met in a few months and bills have to get paid. So I've kept it to sort of those that are under like $20,000 to just put through with the expectation that I would give you a list as I did of where we stand. Does anyone have any questions on these items before we go to the one new invoice that has to be approved?
No.
Okay. So then we do have an invoice from Design Lab, which you can see that I sent out, is to finish up the construction documents and do the additional services that Fitzmyer and Tachi that we had agreed to at a previous meeting to do their additional work for the building electrification change and to help us with the Green Communities Grant. So if there are questions on that, otherwise, I would make a motion that we approve the Design Lab invoice dated November 2nd in the amount of $124,573.25.
Second.
That was Kat, Lisa.
Tina?
I'll approve. I will go around. Aisha,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Kat,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Sunny,
Yeah.
Morgan,
Yes.
Marcy,
Yes.
Tina. Yes.
Denise is a yes also.
Thank you, Denise. It's unanimous.
And then the other item under invoices obviously was to just have a conversation with the committee as invoices come in. Is the committee okay if I proceed how I have been? Do you want to meet weekly to approve invoices as they come in? Do you want to set a threshold that I can put through a certain dollar amount without committee approval? How would you like to handle that so that I can get invoices paid? I assume people don't want to meet weekly just to approve invoices, but I'm happy to if we need to. So I'll just throw that out there if anyone has any comments on that.
Does anyone have yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Do you get them weekly, monthly? So what I'm picturing is that you give us an update when you either get a critical mass that you have approved, or like we just say every 2 weeks you send us a list of what's come through.
So I'm happy to do either. The Design Lab and the Collier's invoices are, well, Design Lab comes as they complete the chunks of the project. I think once we enter the next phase, there'll be a regular invoice. Collier's, we get a standard invoice a month. It's the other stuff that pops up. As you can see, the peer review, the cost estimator, special permitting costs, the moving of the library, things like that. It could be whenever these services are incurred. I think obviously for the next, few months, we may not have this issue other than some of these smaller invoices and the regular monthly ones, but I just want to get a feel for it. I had to put the invoices through, which is why I started to panic a little bit without the committee reviewing it. So I started to keep the ledger. I can send it out weekly. I can send it out monthly. I can send it out as we have meetings. It's really, however, I keep it anyways. So at whatever interval or however the committee wants it handled, I'm fine with.
Sorry, I'm raising my hand. I'm sorry, my camera's not working. It's
No,
Morgan.
go ahead, Morgan.
I think maybe it would just make sense to say that we can approve the regular Design Lab and Collier's invoices because they're pretty planned out what they're going to be, even if their intervals are different, and then maybe have like I don't know, pick an arbitrary amount, 10,000, 20,000, whatever we want to say, that you can approve, because I don't think anybody wants to be held up. I don't think you need to hold up paying the bills just for us to meet about it and then you can recap it. I don't think you're going to get anything major in the next couple of months, right? That we'd have to be like, oh crap, she approved the fire suppression system.
Right.
I would agree with that. Do we want to set a limit then? Or just authorize Denise to pay invoices?
Denise, what do you think is like a comfortable amount that things would be coming under? If we said 10,000, would that be enough per invoice? to not cause a stir?
No, I mean, I would say if we made it 25,000, I mean, 10,000 at this point, you know, I wouldn't have been able to pay the movers.
Okay,
Because
that's
the
what I'm
cost-
looking for, is
The
a
cost
gauge.
of things is, you know, we don't expect some
Crazy.
of the costs to be what they are. You know,
Okay.
so if you want to do, and again, if there's something that's questionable, I mean, we can't really approve it through email. But I'm happy to send, like, if we don't have a meeting, I'm happy to send it out and just let you all know that I need to pay it so that you have a heads up. But I can certainly, if you want to say 25,000, at least, I don't expect much to be over that, quite frankly, but at least it gives me a threshold to
Just
target.
move. Right. I mean, I think that sounds fine to me, but
Is that a motion I hear, Morgan?
I think we'll see.
Lisa, go ahead.
That's just what I was gonna do. How about if I
Oh,
make a
okay.
motion that we authorize Denise to pay all Design Lab and Collier's invoices as they come due? And we authorize her to spend up to $25,000 on a single invoice with our prior approval. And that she reaches out to the committee for approval for invoices over $25,000.
Seconded.
Do I need to go around, Denise? Lisa.
So you can ask everyone to
Yes.
raise their virtual hand and you can declare it unanimous if everyone has their hand up. Do that.
Okay. I see everybody's hands.
I'm driving and I can't find the
Okay,
hand
Marcy, do
function,
you
but
say yes, though?
yes.
Okay, we're good then. It's unanimous.
Okay,
Okay, so
thank you.
then. Yeah, thank you. That makes it easier. So next is to approve the minutes from our September meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, anyone want to make a motion or anyone have any discussion or comments on the minutes from September?
I haven't had a chance to read them. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, sorry about the late send. We can do them next time.
I mean, if anyone else read them and is ready, but I haven't looked at them yet.
Anybody want to make a motion to approve them or would you want to wait till next time? All right, let's wait till next time. That's okay. Is there anything else anybody else wants to say? Everybody's so quiet. Okay, then. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn at 7:44 PM.
Second.
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Design Lab.
Everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for
Thank
coming.
you all.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Too.
Thank you.
Bye.